Welcome back, everyone, to WTF Walk the Floors. We are now at episode 16. This is going to be a sweet 16 episode. I'm Stephanie Ledger and joined with my co-host, Michèle Kline.
Hello, everyone. We are so excited today, as always, about episode 16, Sweet 16, and here is why. We are going to go into a very, very important topic that is in line with the season we're going into. We're going to talk about pool operations, recreational activities in resorts, and we have someone who is a professional in the subject, a subject matter expert. Not only that, but he's engaging with his team. He is creative in the way of providing solutions, and we're so, so excited and thrilled to have you here, Dave Campbell. Thank you so much for joining us today. So Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself, a tiny bit about your career and expertise, and please don't hold on and tell us about your WTF moment that you want to share with us.
Yeah, my name is Dave Campbell. I live here in Las Vegas. I've been in recreation for a long time, probably like 14, 15 years. Started in kind of summer camps and then just like worked through different sectors of it and then ended up kind of in hotels at one point. I've always worked with young adults and I've always found ways to engage young adults in the workforce and find ways to just be creative in managing them and then also staffing up as well as like keeping them engaged throughout a busy season. And then besides that, in my free time, I really like volunteering, climbing rocks, riding my bike, and just trying to be around people with the same mindset, and personal development is really big to me. So this is exciting to be a part of it.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. We're so excited to have you today.
Thank you.
All right, Dave. So tell us, I'm sure you have thousands of stories that you could share with us today on, WTF moments from situations with guests, especially in Vegas, who probably had a little bit too much to drink under that crazy sun, to staffing your operations where you're, like you said, you're dealing with team members from various age groups, and a lot of your team member base is very, very young. So tell us a bit about, if you can share with us one story at least, and then give us some tools on how do we do that? How do we go from 0 to hundreds in any point in time? So Stephanie, what's our subject today? What's the title of it? I missed that.
Yeah. So we are putting the P in pool for people.
Ooh, very nice. Cool.
Not that
All
other
right.
P that everyone else is thinking of.
Hey, well, that goes with this whole thing. I'm sure a lot of operating managers would laugh at that subject title.
Oh yeah.
All right, take us through your journey.
Yeah, so one story that like kind of triggered my creative thinking was we had a job fair one year where I wasn't very confident in that would solve any of my problems just based on that. I think job fairs target specific things, right? And young adults aren't like the target market for a specific job fair. You need to go find young adults and then figure out a way to bring them into your operation and your organization. And so after sitting at a table for a long time, I think I had like 5 people come in. So I was like, all right, well, that's good because we've never done this before. Like 5 is a win, but like I still needed, 40 to 80 more staff throughout the season. And so what I did is I was like, I'm going to go back to the drawing board here and kind of do what I'm good at, which is building partnerships with organizations and like creating avenues. So I'm like, hey, I have a resource to pick from here, here, and here. And if I can get different batches out of that helps me just get ahead of hiring. And so it started out with like proximity search, right? I was like, okay, I looked at where I was working and then what was within 5 square miles. Cause I was like, okay, if I'm a teenager and I don't have a vehicle, how do I get to work? Or how do I get my parents to take me to work? So like I was looking at things to make it easier for us to attract people. And it's just kind of funny. Like I met this guy, Randall Cunningham, who's like a professional football player, but I didn't know who he was because I don't follow sports. Like I follow like climbing and skateboarding and stuff. So I go to this meeting saying, hey, I met this guy, Randall Cunningham, and everyone's like, do you know who that is? And I was like, no, but you know, he's got like a youth program. So that was kind of like where I started with that. Like, and it was just like the seed where it grew from. And then from there, I made some connections with Boys and Girls Club because I was like, all right, that's a really good resource to tap into based on that. You have a lot of underprivileged youth working like in that organization, but there's a lot of leaders in there too. And so we created a program together, which I would go in and teach them how to like find their first job, what to wear, proximity, how to get to work, you know, just kind of those basic things and how to interview. And from there, it kind of just blossomed into this huge flower that I had no idea would ever solve all my hiring problems. So I had people like waiting for us to come get them for work. And so like that program was really one of the best things that I did. And then I also worked with a local high school as well, that was in proximity, and worked with the Career Center. And that was a little bit slower, but towards the end, we were able to go into classrooms. And then I was also able to engage some of my staff that were leads that wanted to be like a college instructor or like a teacher. And I'd say, hey, I want you to make a PowerPoint and come in and talk to your peers for practice, right? And so when I look at things, I try to find solutions that like not only solve my problem, but give other people buy-in on the team to help understand why it's important to like always support people in all their roles. And that was what made me really proud of those moments. And I was like, when I saw those programs come to fruition, it was like, I no longer had to go to job fairs the same way. Like I was already staffed and ready to go because I had people being like, hey, I want to come work with you. I want to be on this team. And it was really awesome, right? And so for me, that's how I look at staffing. I'm like, what can we do to build a huge network that also leverages everybody on our team and their strengths and also pushes them into different areas of growth that they didn't know was possible.
That is a great way of, sorry, Stephanie, that's a great way of dealing with that WTF type of situation. You know, you're ramping up and the labor intensive hours that it takes to put together a job fair, and all of a sudden you're sitting there for 4 hours and maybe just 5 people show up in those 4 hours. What do you do to get out of that negative zone, right? How many managers, how many operators would actually walk away from there and then allow HR to figure it out and come up with the solutions? I think it's gold, the fact that you went out of your way to try to be part of that solution and come up with different ways, creative ways to tap into the community and find those pockets of people that would benefit from the jobs that you were creating. I think that's super cool. Stephanie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that I was just going to say the same thing of thinking outside of the box and not relying on HR. You know, there's so many times that the operators, they're in the day-to-day operation and now they're worn out and now they need to, you know, get staff to be able to help with the operation. And then they just rely on human resources going through the database. And, you know, like you were saying, you're working with more of a younger demographic. So they don't have that established resume that would be able to have those keywords that are, you know, filtered in through HR, and being able to say, okay, how can I be able to look outside the box where I can be able to see logistically that they can make it to and from work, and then being also to an environment that is also to cater to their demographic as well, and not something that they're going to be like, okay, this is boring and I don't want to be part of it. And then now you have an unengaged employee too.
Yeah, and like for me, it was more about like just my personal kind of like commitments to myself. Like I've always wanted to help people that were like underserved. You know, there's like all these resources out there and they have lots of talent. And like what was unique in that program was that I was also able to build into the budget sponsoring individuals, right? And so because you're going to hire a lifeguard, they need to go get a certification and then they have to update the certification. And then they, you know, and so someone that might not have that money, and to have like the peace of mind saying, hey, we can sponsor you, come work with us and grow with us, you know, like that's a huge recruiting selling point for a young adult that's like, well, I don't have $150, but you're going to pay for it. I don't have to do anything. I just show up to this class. And, there's a lot of logistics. So sometimes like some of the early on struggles of that was, how do we get the kids that are being sponsored to these lifeguard classes? And like, we had to go through, had to like build relationships with other directors in the Boys and Girls Club to be like, hey, they're going to need a ride there, And so it's like, there was a lot of time invested on the back end beyond my like regular traditional role and expectations. And so the cool thing is like, once you start doing that and it started picking up speed, it was like that program just took off, and it really just like, all these kids were like, hey, I can go do this summer. I can make some okay money for a young adult, and I don't have to pay up front. And as long as I make it to my 90 days, and that's how we set it up, like they would stay on and then they didn't have to reimburse. And so that was like another really cool opportunity. And I know different organizations are structured differently. And when I was with that team, like I had a lot more flexibility because like I had presented this stuff with numbers and data, and I was like, this is going to work. Like we just have to keep trying. Obviously, like if you're in a really big box, there's probably some, different rules, but it's always good to kind of push on those doors and see where you can go, because if you can solve a problem that doesn't really require much other than like an operator taking ownership of it, I think that takes a lot of pressure off other leaders in the organization, because they're like, yeah, he's going to take care of it. He's going to make sure it gets done.
That is so great. Such great insight, and taking that leap of faith and going through that caution tape that sometimes we have, right? I'm not saying break through the red tape, because there's reasons why the rules are there, and there's reasons why there are certain approval levels in the process. But going through the caution tape and exploring new avenues, new ways of handling the business, I think that's incredible. That's a great opportunity, and what a huge opportunity that you had created at that time when you put that program together, not just for your community, but for the organization you were working for. So that's great. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. I remember sitting in some of those job fairs where we had to go, like I said before, from like 0 team members from the pool being closed to hundreds, to be able to have a 24-hour operation with several different bodies of water, where now you're looking at not just your lifeguards, but you're looking at anyone who's in F&B. And then you're also looking at potentially, in my case, in this specific situation that I'm thinking of, having the team members from the gaming side readily available to be part of the operation in 100-degree heat. And then how do you train all these members all at once? It's crazy. So Dave, do you mind sharing with us some of these training tips when you go from having no team members to revamping and restarting your season? And, everybody's pumped and excited and motivated about getting started, but, it's super hot. You're running around like you're a chicken with a head cut off. So what are some of these training tips that you could share with our audience to go from 0 to 100, and what does that look like? How do you keep your team engaged, and how do you keep safety in check and uniforms in check and all those things?
Yeah, that is a huge aspect of it. The number one thing that I did really well was like I planned. I knew like pool season, I'd have to have people hired in February, and they would probably separate in October or November, but like coming in June, I would start planning everything with the people that I was working with in my network. Like I would say, hey, let's start talking in July, August, and September to start that funnel effect, right? And then setting up everything for the next year. So like I looked at everything 1 to 3 years, and I had like a system manager looking up to 1 year, and then like the leads 0 to 6 months, right? And so I really leveraged my team members to be like, hey, next year when we do training, this is what we need to focus on. And I listened to that. And so for me, it was all about planning and being prepared for that. And then once you get people in, it's like having the right people with HR understanding the importance of like getting people hired and pushed through. And one thing that I also thought was like a cool solution to some of my problems was, I knew that since I had young staff working, like they're not going to come to regular orientation. And so now like I have people that have been here all day that are teaching the orientation, but now I have to go to them and say, hey, I need you to stay later. So what I did was I would just say, hey, all you need to do is teach like our basic orientation and I'll take everything over. And I would stay late and we would run our orientations in the evenings and go through the expectations, get the uniform sizes, get everything that we need, get the schedule. And, you know, getting the schedule is really hard because they all have different things. They've got like soccer, basketball, music. Parents don't want their kids working late, right? And so you're trying to balance everything. And then you're balancing the expectations of the leadership team is saying, hey, I need everything open. Are you going to be able to make it work, right? And so once you get enough numbers in there, eventually that schedule fills itself in. And with the training, like once they're on property, it's all about like pairing them up with mentors and putting together a training program. So one thing that we did was a skill of the week, where it's like every week the staff had to sign off on something different. And that could be like interchanged throughout the entire year of season. And so it'd be like, all right, this is customer service this month. And we'd go through and put 4 things in there based on like the feedback we're getting from surveys or just like observations from other leaders around property. And then the next month, if it's hot, it's like, okay, now we're going to go back through heat-related illness. And then what was cool is that we have staff that were like, hey, I really like this, but I'm not super confident in myself yet, but I want to get involved. And so then we could have them teach this and be a part of like the process. And so when people would come into the organization, they got like, instead of just being thrown out, it was kind of like, okay, they're paired up with people and get the opportunity to kind of like assimilate in with like some structure, even like in a chaotic environment. And then another thing that we did during our training was they get like a new hire kit to like make them stand out. So they get like, you know, hydro flask, like logoed hats, like water bottles, other things, right? And then when we give that to them, like, hey, you know, the expectation is to use this because we want to reduce our use of cups because that's like part of like our green initiatives. And then all the staff always had to carry that. And it was just something that like, kind of united them separately from other operations just because like they had this kind of cool kit and they're young and they just come in. And so they're excited, right?
It's great for employee engagement. It's great for the environment. It's great for pushing the brand. I mean, you're hitting so many nails when you put that in place. That's just so fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead. No.
Oh, and the other thing that was cool is like each year we were able to prove through like the numbers and the data in our budgets that this was like a good investment of money because it solved problems down the line. And that with that, like we also do these really cool like not recruiting parties, but like welcome on parties and then like end of season parties where one year if we had kids that came to work every single day, they got put in this raffle they didn't know about, but 3 of them walked away with 55-inch TVs, you know, stuff like that. And like, you know, I had to sell that one, but like it showed that if you came to work, like you just came to work, like there's these cool opportunities here within our team. And then what's cool about that is like they go and tell their friends, and then next year someone's like, I want to work there too. And then when they come to like the recruiting event, after we get them through everything, it's like we sit down and talk to them, and we have like the staff come up and say, this is why I like working here. This is what I can learn. And like these are like 16 to 18-year-olds that are just standing in front of their peers, you know, telling about their summer experience, right? And it's not an easy job at all. Like they have to like, they're responsible for like the one thing you can't replace. Like no one can replace anybody's kids or family members. They're responsible for like medical response stuff. They're responsible for just like keeping a pool deck clean. They're responsible for if the pool has to shut down, they have to field questions, right? And a lot of that comes from just like being present with them and like figuring out ways to go back and analyze the mistakes that have happened in the past to like put tools in their pocket for the future. And that's something that we really focused on all the time. You know, like one of our trainings was we looked at all the trends that would impact our operations because I had the pools and then the program. So I was responsible most recently for like all the guest activities. And so we created this big ledger where we could put it at different stations, like lifeguard stations and carts, where if like something happened on a big weekend, every staff knew what to do. And they could just go look at this and be like, okay, this pool shut down for 4 hours. Here's my options, right? And I just go plug and play. And I knew, you know, to me it was like seamless on paper, but like the guests don't know that like what's going on, right? Because it's chaotic. But to them, they're kind of like, I have a plan and I can do this and help here, you know, and engage.
And I feel that's building their empowerment as well.
Yes,
so,
exactly. I was going to tell you that, Stephanie. This is like music to our ears.
I know.
Right?
But yeah, because I started in recreation when I was 17, so I know how it feels, and because I had that mentor and also to those tools and guidance, I ended up now spending over 20 years in the hospitality industry when I was supposed to be in a totally different industry. But yeah, when you're having those tools set in place of your checks and balances, your engagement with the employees, because that's also too just a recruitment tool in itself of telling their other friends that, hey, come, at our pool we're doing this, and these are what, the swag that we're getting,
You got some pretty cool
that they'll start
stuff.
seeing at school too,
Yeah.
in the fall when everyone's back, and be like, no, next summer come over here. But definitely getting back to, having those boards placed strategically around, where it's saying, okay, I think I know what to do, but this is just kind of my reassurance that, okay, I definitely do know what I need to do, and taking the next steps for whatever that case may be.
And like training a large staff is really hard. If you get them all in one room, it's like great, but like I don't think it's practical always, because like a lot of that stuff is just like real time, Like I would always tell them it, like when we get them on board and everything, I was like, you might just be a lifeguard right now or a rec staff, but like you're gonna get like a lot of experience just in conversation right now, because how you interact with people is like how you're gonna grow your confidence, right? So if someone comes at you with a question you don't know, you have the opportunity to be like, hey, I don't know, and fluff it off. And you're like, I'll go find out, right? Taking ownership. And one thing that we were really big on, and I put a lot of trust in, is that like staff was doing that. I remember one time the pool shut down and this girl was yelling at one of the staff, and she was like only 21, but the girl was like 16 getting yelled at. And the father stepped in and was like, hey, like you're not much older than that. Like they're just trying to do their job. And I was like, I just thought that was like an interesting moment, because I was standing there, and I would always just kind of take the approach with them. And I was like, look, like whether you want to put on paper your lifeguard or like you want to be a rec staff or whatever, you get the opportunity to like practice having conversations with people every day. So when you go to your next interview, you have this confidence of like saying, hey, I have this experience, dealing like in an environment that's not very friendly all the time, right? So like you have like building blocks for foundation of like growth. But it was really about like tapping into that and like building relationships with them and finding things that like engage them all the time, like trying to, one thing that we did was like when we redid our break room, it's like letting them do it, like letting them take ownership of painting it and putting stuff in. And I remember one time something happened in there, and like first thing, like someone did this, and then like they all came together and like we have to figure out who did this, because like they spent a lot of time putting that together, because that was like their space, right? And so like there's all these different levels of growth that happened, and I try to do that like all the time, like every place that I've worked and been a leader with. Like it's really important to me to give people like the opportunity to go out and like do their job and learn, and not so much being like, hey, you did this wrong. It's more like teachable moments, right? Like what did we learn from this, and like how can we move forward from it? Like what are your thoughts? Like if this isn't working, tell me. And like I had conversations like that with all the staff, because the way I see it, when you have seasonal staff, like 30% are top performers, 30% are like in this middle range of, hey, I have a job. I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm here. It's cool. I'm getting some money. The other 30% are like, well, yeah, I got this job. I don't know if I want this, but like I'm here. And then like 10% kind of like, you're like, I probably need you more than you need the job, but like maybe we can get a couple like good things out of this. And I think that's like true with all seasonal staffing, because like I've had a lot of experience with it. And the cool thing is that top 30% can like pull the middle 30% in. And then when you have your next season, it's like you want to get those people back, right? And so like when you plant these seeds of growth and opportunities to be more than just a lifeguard and like take ownership of stuff, they're like, yeah, I get some freedom in my job, instead of just showing up and being like, I'm going to punch this clock, sit here and do this.
Yeah.
And for me,
I also think what you did before you move on to the next thing, but we were talking about the empowerment and being able to how to handle guest situations and having that confidence, but then also to just their own accountability of like clocking in and out, not showing up to work, and then the repercussions that come with that. And I remember when I was young, it would be like, senior skip day at school, and we would all be at the beach, and then it would be like, oh, 3 p.m.'s my shift. And as much as I wanted to be like calling out and being with my friends, it was like, nope, I have the responsibility that I need to making sure that I'm going to work. And I think that's also too in recreation, when you are, you know, having such a young team, that there's so many other job skills that you're teaching them, and that they're starting to then get that aha moment of being like, okay, this isn't like working at a franchise restaurant or the mom and pop's diner down the street that's your friend. Like, this is a major hotel that has a complete age range, and everyone has the same responsibility and accountability as well. So I just wanted to add that, and sorry to cut you off.
Oh no,
That's
and
a great point, Stephanie. And last week, I think we spoke about the different policies and procedures, and cell phones and clocking in and out, showing up to work was part of it. And it takes me back to a WTF type of moment where I had a manager who kept on having issues with team members on the pool deck on their phone. Now you have a lifeguard who's sitting, and Dave, you probably had this happen to you
tons
too.
of times. Yeah.
You have a lifeguard sitting in their podium on their phone, scrolling away, right? And you're like, dude, I'm hiring you, like I'm paying you to pay attention to what's going on. Like, there's people's lives that are in your hands, literally, right?
Yeah.
So this manager ends up in the HR office because, wait for it, she was fed up. She was done. She was done with team members always being on the phone. And she would also obviously be reprimanded and talked to when anyone in the leadership team would walk by the deck and see a team member on the phone. So she started doing drills, random drills. And on the drills, if the team member had their phone on them, you get in the pool, beep,
Yeah.
you get in the pool, and that's it. So there were at least 3 team members that show up in HR complaining that their phone is now ruined and how the company will pay for their phone because their phone was in their pocket. So obviously pulled out SOPs and at the proof of you're not supposed to have your phone on you. You're supposed to leave it in your locker, because they all had lockers that were assigned to them. And that was the end of it. That was a WTF type of moment, how a manager deals with, that's it, enough is enough. You're going to start paying attention to your job. You're not here to play with your phone, or your phone is going to drown.
Yeah. We would, one of the assistant managers, they would do that too. Like if they got like on the radio or something, they'd be like, hey, so-and-so might have a phone. They'd be like, hey, we need you to just jump in real quick and do like a skills test. And be like, I don't want to. And it's like, well, you have 2 choices, And what's hard is like, if you're trying to staff up, right? Like you have to have you have to be really patient, right? Because like they might not know, you don't know their background, and like they don't know. Like when you're 15 or 16, you're like, I don't know, like you're thinking of everything else. And so one thing that like we really focused on was like trying to just like understand, and I would see them as individuals and not just like people sitting and saying like, hey, let me recognize you for who you are, right? And like build these relationships to like help you understand why it's important that we follow these rules and do these things the way we do it. And it's tough when you have like 100 people under you or whatever your staff size is. Like it's tough to touch everybody and like get them engaged, because
and in such little amount of time.
Yeah, right. Like
you only have them for a few months.
Yeah, and so like one thing that like we were really successful with was the way we set up like our onboarding was, and when you talk about policy and procedures, like we had a really long, just the way the department was set up, just because like things transfer between activities and pools, and so like there's all these rules, and I never liked giving them a handbook one, because like they're not going to read it, and if it's like 40 pages, you're just like, I'm not going to read this. Like I already know you're not going to read it, right? And I guess that's just the nature of like the beast. And so what we do is we put these PowerPoints together and like hit the really important big things, right? And we'd say, hey, this is it, like no phone, or like you need to clock in and clock out. You need to do this, this, and this, or like you need to make sure that like these areas are cleaned all the time. And then at the end, like they would all sign off on like a sign-in sheet, and that was like how we verified that they knew that. And so when they'd be like, well, I didn't know, and we're like, well, we gave you the manual, and they're like, well, I didn't read it, and you're like, well, we had you sign this in the beginning, right? And it's tough because like you need staff per like the health department, right? And so like you have to fold on things, and that's like where it's tough, because if you don't have like a pipeline and you're terming people, now you're creating like you're creating a strain on the operation, which impacts like the guest experience, which like then comes back in these surveys, and then that goes upstairs, and it comes back to you, and you're like, well, I'm just trying to do my job, right? And
you're like WTF.
Yeah. And so like I got real creative one year at a place, and like kind of restructured our point system and how we like disciplined, because the nature of the beast was like, if the call out's like 3 points on a weekend, and like you don't have enough staff, and that person does it, like, and they do it enough.
That's it. And they're under 90 days.
Yeah,
that's
like,
it.
Yeah.
That is so funny. Dave, listen, we would love to have you back. We don't want to make it too long because, like we said, people tend not to pay attention for too long. But we'd love to have you back and talk about point system and, how you creatively change some of these or were like the trendsetter to change some of these policies and procedures to make sure that you can adapt to your workforce. Stephanie and I had this conversation in the past. We are in this labor crisis, so we have to adapt without losing the core values of the brand, without losing the core values of what you're trying to bring to the guest experience. So we would love to have you back and touch base on that.
Yeah, I'd love to share that. It's not like, it's kind of you really got to push softly through that, right? And like have some type of plan in place, and you have to have some type of rapport where you're like, this system works, but like if we do this, it's going to crash everything. And like there's all these indirect consequences that occur, people don't want to see like the pool is closed because they don't care that you don't have staff. Like they're like, I'm here, that's not my problem, that's your problem. And then it's just like this wheel that just keeps going, right? And then like you're like, how do I like stop the wheel just for a second to like buy me some time so I can get people in? And that's how I kind of looked at stuff. And like we were very lucky that I had like a leadership team that was very supportive to me in the fact that like they're like, hey, go be creative and like figure this out, but like try not to push too hard out of the lines, but we'll support it.
That's
and
great.
So, like, yeah, and like to do that, I think the best way to like build those relationships with those people is like know what you need and like how to present it, and like have the data to track it, and being like, last year we had this percentage of surveys said the pool was closed early, and if we change this, we might be able to like back this off a little bit, and we'll try it this year, and if it doesn't work, then we'll go back to the old way. But like as long as you can build that data and like understand where it's going, like I think that like separates you from other operating managers, just based on that, like you're doing the back end plus you're doing the front end, and you're bringing like multiple solutions to a problem. It's really hard for people, and a lot of people don't want to deal with like young adults in the workforce because they're just like, and it's like you have to find someone that's really good at it, and then also being able to manage the other expectations of everybody else.
Exactly.
Take it with a grain of salt.
And with all the competition too, you're only one pool of how many in the season as well as, so then making sure that you're attracting, the cream of the crop, the best of the best, and getting them also to be, if they're not the best of the best, but getting them to the best of the best. But this was great. Thank you so much, Dave.
Yeah,
and
thanks for having me.
Our viewers be able to reach out to you on LinkedIn or anywhere else that you would like to point the viewers to.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, just Dave Campbell. I'm not sure if like the address, but I'm like connected to Michèle, so you can find me that way. I can email you my email address too, and then then give me a call. All that stuff's on there.
Wonderful, Dave. Thank you so much for being here. We'll make sure that when we post this episode that there's a link to reach you, so that you can connect with some people that may have a need for some tips and tools. And we hope that everyone enjoyed this, that you got some information that will be useful for you as you go into the 2022 summer season. It should be super fun. Make it count. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great day.